Under the vast star-pierced sky of Syria, where the night whispers secrets of ancient sands, a lone figure stumbles through the jagged desert near the Iraqi border. Wind-whipped grains lash at her sharp-featured face, fair skin tanned golden by relentless sun, her deep blue eyes blazing like twin beacons against the dark. Dark brown hair whips wildly from its tight bun, framing a determined jaw set in quiet fury. Her athletic frame, broad shoulders straining under the impossible load, full bust rising and falling with ragged breaths beneath a torn uniform, curvaceous hips shifting for balance, bears the weight of two massive Navy SEALs, their bloodied forms slung across her like fallen oaks. Crimson droplets trail in the sand, marking her path through this unforgiving hell. The beam from Fob Echo Ridge's watchtower slices the night, pinning her in its merciless glare. Gasps echo from the guards above. It's Olivia Harper, the comm specialist declared dead 3 days ago in a drone strike on Sector Bravo. Her name already carved into a folded flag, a crisp condolence letter speeding to a dusty Texas farmhouse. There, her mother, a lifelong nurse with hands that have mended 1,000 broken soldiers, clutches it now, tears carving rivers down weathered cheeks as she whispers, prayers for a daughter gone too soon, planning a service under the old oak where Liv learned to dream big. How does this Sparrow, the overlooked waif they mocked for her size, dismissed as too delicate for the front lines, haul these giants from the jaws of death? The answer hides in the fierce eagle tattoo etched across her back, a symbol of vision piercing the storm. And in a traitor's voice, chillingly familiar, crackling over the radio that betrayed them all. A flicker in her mind, her father, Iraq, vet gaunt in his final bed, gripping her hand. Don't leave anyone behind, Liv. Ever. She pictures her mother alone, the necklace of strength and shadows heavy around her neck, and her steps steel. The gate creaks open. Shouts shatter the silence. It's Harper. She's got the seals. But as the dust settles, one question hangs heavier than the men on her shoulders. Who summoned that drone? And what unimaginable price will this Sparrow pay to soar? The roar of the base coming alive swallowed the guards' shouts like thunder over the dunes. Medics swarmed forward their boots, kicking up dust as they eased the seals from Olivia's shoulders, those broad, unyielding shoulders that had carried more than flesh and bone through the night. Harper, how in God's name? One medic stammered, his eyes wide under the floodlights. Liv collapsed to her knees, the world blurring at the edges, but her deep blue eyes held steady, locking on the horizon where the desert met the stars. In that moment, as hands reached to lift her, she wasn't the ghost they'd mourned. She was alive, unbroken, a force forged in the fires they'd never seen. But to understand how a woman like Liv Harper became the storm that night, you have to step back into the grinding rhythm of forward-operating base Echo Ridge, perched on the knife edge of northeast Syria. This wasn't some Hollywood outpost with gleaming tech and easy victories. No, Echo Ridge was raw, real, a cluster of concrete bunkers and razor-wire perimeters hunkered in the rugged Badlands, where the desert gave way to jagged rocky mountains just a stone's throw from the Iraqi border. It was a place where the air hung heavy with diesel fumes and the faint acrid tang of spent cordite, where convoys rumbled out on highways, scarred toward Damascus, hunting the last shadows of ISIS holdouts. The terrain was a beast, endless flats of sun-baked sand giving way to sheer cliffs and dry wadis that could swallow a Humvee whole. Soldiers here didn't fight in neat lines. They clawed for every inch, their days measured in patrols that stretched into eternity, and nights haunted by the whine of distant drones. Deep in the heart of it all was the electronic warfare bunker, a dimly lit cave of humming servers and flickering green screens, where Liv spent her shifts like a sentinel in the shadows. At 28, she was a study in quiet intensity, sharp features etched with the focus of someone who'd stared down storms, before fair skin kissed bronze by the Syrian sun peeking through ventilation slits. Her dark brown hair was always pulled into a no-nonsense ponytail, exposing the graceful curve of her neck and her athletic build. 5'4", of lean muscle, broad shoulders tapering to a waist that spoke of endless PT sessions, full bust straining subtly against her olive drab jacket, hips curving with the easy power of a runner, turned heads in the mess hall. It was a beauty that captivated the kind that made young privates steal glances and whisper about the fox in the bunker. But those same eyes, deep blue and piercing as a winter sky, scanned the signal readouts with a precision that unnerved them. Liv wasn't here for admiration. She was the EW specialist, the one who turned invisible waves into lifelines. "Pass me the spectrum analyzer, will ya?" she'd say in that low, steady voice, her fingers dancing over the console like a pianist, coaxing secrets from keys. Electronic warfare, EW as they called it, was her domain, a battlefield no one saw, but everyone felt. "It's like this," she'd explain to a wide-eyed newbie over lukewarm MRE coffee, her blue eyes lighting with that rare spark of passion. EW is electronic warfare. I jam enemy radio waves, think of it as throwing an invisible lock on their comms. One flick of this switch, and their drones go blind, stumbling like drunks in the dark. Without it, we're flying naked. It was her art, detecting the faint hum of hostile frequencies, disrupting them before they could whisper death. But to most of her teammates, hardened men with beards like wire brushes and stories etched in scars, she was just Sparrow. A nickname that started as a jab at her petite frame, her delicate build, but stuck like sand in a boot. "Cute birdie." A burly sergeant would grunt, slapping her on the back a tad too hard. "Stick to the nest, yeah, fields for the big dogs." And oh, how it stung. In the briefings, when she'd pipe up with a read on a suspicious ping, "That frequency's off, sir," could be a setup. Heads would turn, chuckles rippling like aftershocks. Lieutenant Harlan, all swagger and squared jaw, leaned back, once smirking at the room full of nods. "Liv, darlin', you're gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but the battlefield. That's muscle and grit, not some code monkey magic. Save the pretty theories for the bunker." The laughter followed her out, a chorus of doubt that echoed louder than any explosion. They saw the curves, the soft lines of her face, and assumed fragility. Never the steel beneath, the way her hands never trembled on the jammer, or how she'd outrun half the platoon on those brutal mountain PTs, her athletic form cutting through the heat like a blade. Yet in the quiet hours, when the bunker fans droned like distant artillery, Liv would pause her fingers, brushing the thin fabric of her shirt, where the eagle tattoo spread its wings across her back, a bold ink of feathers and fierce gaze, inked in a dusty Texas parlor after her father's funeral. It peeked through, sometimes, a shadow of defiance on her skin. That touch pulled her back always to the wound that no bandage could cover her father. Tom Harper, Iraq vet, turned ghost in a VA bed, abandoned by his squad in a dusty ambush. They called it tactical retreat, Liv. He'd rasped his once strong hands frail in hers. "Left me bleeding out 'cause I was too tired. Don't you ever let that system blind you, girl. See the truth act on it." He died with that regret in his eyes, a man who'd given everything for a brotherhood that turned its back. Liv touched the tattoo, now feeling the raised lines like braille of loss. "I won't let anyone be left behind," she whispered to the empty air, her voice a vow swallowed by the hum of machines. It wasn't just words. It was the fire that kept her grinding self-teaching EW from his dog-eared field manuals, long after lights out turning Prejudice into fuel. Those Texas roots ran deep, pulling her like gravity back to a simpler world. Picture a sun-faded farmhouse on the outskirts of Lubbock, where the wind carried the scent of mesquite and memory. Her mother, Sarah, a nurse with laugh lines like road maps and hands calloused from years in ERs, stitching up oil roughnecks, and storm-tossed ranchers had been the quiet anchor. Evenings found them on the porch swing, Sarah's fingers deftly rebandaging Tom's latest phantom ache from Iraq scars. "Strength in shadows, Mork. Livy," she'd say, her voice soft as the silver necklace she slipped around her daughter's neck, engraved with those words, "A talisman against the dark." Power ain't always in the spotlight. It's forged, where no one's looking, in the quiet fights that build you unbreakable. Tom would nod from his rocker, pipe smoke curling like ghosts, recounting his war in fragments, the blistering heat of Fallujah, the crack of AKs in the night. I was left behind as too tired kiddo. He'd admit, eyes distant. Squad pulled out, figured I was a lost cause. Don't blindly trust the system, it'll chew you up if you let it. Question it. Fight smarter. Liv had taken those lessons to heart, devouring his stack of EW texts under the covers, with a flashlight, her young mind, mapping frequencies like constellations. West Point had been her rebellion, top of her class in signals, but sidelined from sniper school with a curt, "Too female, too small, Harper. You'll get hurt." The rejection burned hotter than Syrian sand, but it honed her. She joined up anyway, channeling that fire into the invisible wars of waves and whispers. Back in the bunker now, as the screens pulsed with data, another anomaly flickered. A SIGINT blip signals intelligence, whispering of something foul in Sector Bravo. Her heart quickened. It felt like her father's voice in the static, a warning unheeded. She gathered her notes, the pages crisp with her precise script, and headed to the briefing tent. The air there was thick with sweat, and stale coffee officers clustered around a battered map table under a sagging canvas roof. Commander Carter, a grizzled oak of a man with a mustache like steel wool, outlined the op for SEAL Team Delta. A night insertion into Bravo's narrow mountain passes those treacherous veins of rock and shadow where ISIS ghosts still lurked. Liv stepped forward, her ponytail swinging like a metronome, blue eyes locking on Carter's. "Sir, I've got a read on this. SIGINT's picking up non-standard chatter. Could be an insider feeding cords. That voice on the it's too clean, too familiar." Carter's brow furrowed, a flicker of impatience crossing his face like a cloud over the sun. Brooks, the intel officer, a sharp-eyed woman with a clipboard perpetually in hand, leaned in, scanning Liv's printout. "Harper, this is thin. No hard vectors, just vibes. We're not chasing ghosts on your gut call." The room shifted, murmurs rising like steam. Harlan chuckled low, that same old glint in his eye. "Come on, Sparrow. We know you're the brains in the bunker, but Delta's boys handle the dirt. Save the code for the birds." Laughter rippled again, softer this time, but it landed like shrapnel in Liv's chest. She felt the weight of it, their eyes on her curves, not her charts, her size, not her smarts. But she stood tall, clutching the necklace under her collar, its cool metal, a reminder of shadows that strengthened. "With respect, ma'am, sir, this isn't gut. It's patterns I've tracked for weeks. If we ignore it, Bravo becomes a kill box." Carter waved her off, his voice final as a gavel. "Stick to your lane, Sparrow. Delta rolls at dusk. Dismissed." As she turned away, the dismissal echoing in her ears, Liv's fingers tightened on the necklace. Military discipline hammered obedience into you like nails, but conscience. That was the hammer's echo, urging action when the nails bent wrong. Her blue eyes flashed with resolve, the eagle on her back itching like a call to flight. Little did they know the shadows were stirring, and Liv Harper was done nesting. Back in the bunker's glow, that anomalous blip on Liv's screen refused to fade. It pulsed like a heartbeat, insistent, pulling at the threads of her resolve. She leaned closer, her sharp features illuminated in the green haze, dark brown ponytail slipping a strand across her forehead. The air hummed with the low whine of cooling fans, a mechanical lullaby that couldn't drown the static in her mind. This wasn't just noise. It was a whisper from the shadows, the kind her father had trained her to hear. With a steady hand, she keyed in a test sequence on the crew jammer, her go-to rig, a backpack-sized beast of antennas and circuits slung from patrols. "All right, you ghost," she murmured, fingers flying. "Let's see what you're hiding." The device whirred to life, sending out a ripple of disruption across the spectrum. Electronic warfare at its core, using the crew counter-radio-controlled improvised explosive device to jam enemy waves, like draping a digital fog over their eyes. In seconds, the blip sharpened into clarity, a ISIS drone signal slithering through encrypted channels, its path locked on Sector Bravo's rugged spine. Those narrow mountain roads twisting like veins through sheer cliffs and boulder-choked passes were no place for a blind insertion. Liv's blue eyes narrowed, heart kicking up like a drum in her chest. The signal wasn't random. It carried chords, timings, blueprints for a slaughter. And woven in the chatter, a voice. Low, gravelly, too polished for the usual ragtag insurgents. Familiar, like an old scar itching under the skin. She cross-referenced it feverishly, the bunker shrinking around her, as memories flooded in her father's yellowed notes on SIGINT signals, intelligence scribbled in the margins. "Listen, twice, act once. The system's blind spots are where heroes are born." This was it, an ambush primed for SEAL Team Delta, the elite ghosts rolling out at dusk. But that voice, it tugged at her echoing sergeant. Reyes, her old mentor from Basic, the grizzled vet who drilled her on EW basics, only to ghost her after her fast track. No wait could it be Cole from Delta, the quiet operator she'd overheard in the mess, always too evasive about his patrols. Misdirection gnawed at her. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Liv snatched her printouts and bolted for the briefing tent, the desert heat slapping her face like a warning. The canvas flap parted to reveal the same circle of faces. Carter at the head Brooks, scribbling notes, Harlan nursing a dented canteen. The map glowed under a hanging bulb, Bravo's contours mocking her with their lethal grace. She stepped into the circle ponytail, swaying her athletic frame, curved hips shifting for stance. Full bust, a subtle rise under her jacket drawing the inevitable glances. But her voice cut through low and unyielding blue eyes, steadfast as she laid out the chords. "Sir, this SIGINT doesn't lie. Insider chatter, that voice coordinating the drone drop. It's setting Delta up for a kill box in Bravo's passes. We rewrote or we lose them." The tent went still, then fractured with doubt. Brooks peered over her glasses, tone clipped as a wire. "Harper, this is speculation. No vector locks, no confirms. We're not pulling Delta on a frequency fart." Carter rubbed his jaw mustache, twitching. "Appreciate the heads up, Sparrow, but evidence zip. Team Delta precedes elite means they handle ghosts." Whispers slithered from the corners, Harlan muttering to a sergeant. "She's sharp, sure, but easy on the eyes makes her jumpy. Imagining bogeymen to play hero." The words landed like dust in her throat, stirring the old rage, the same dismissal that had barred her from sniper quals, labeling her too soft for the sharp end. Liv's grip tightened on her notes, knuckles whitening. That voice on the signal looped in her head, a betrayal waiting to uncoil. Her father's whisper echoed, "Don't repeat Iraq, Liv. Act." The shadows in her necklace warmed against her skin, forging resolve from the hurt. She had to act, no repeating the abandonment that took him. As the briefing broke, Delta's rotors thumping in the distance, Liv slipped toward the perimeter fence. She'd scout the edge of Bravo herself, jam what she could from the shadows. Little did she know, the drone's shadow was already falling. The blast lit the ridge like judgment, a thunderclap of fire and shrapnel that tore the night echoes rolling through the wadis like accusations. Liv crouched on a scouting outcrop mere yards from the drop zone, felt the ground buck beneath her. Heat seared her cheek rocks, pinging off her helmet as she dove into a crevice, heart slamming. The crew jammer in her pack had bought seconds its electromagnetic wall, scrambling the drone's final lock, just enough to veer the worst of it. But the report crackled over her radio seconds later. "Harper down in Bravo blast. Confirm KIA." Her name, etched in error, raced back to Echo Ridge. Carter's voice, heavy. "God rest her. Notify next of kin memorial at 0800. In Texas, the letter arrived at dawn. Sarah Harper unfolding it with trembling hands, the words blurring through tears as she sank to the kitchen floor. Their Sparrow clipped too soon. But in the smoke-choked crevice, Liv Harper drew a ragged breath alive, and the real hunt was just beginning. Dust settled like a shroud in the crevice, the acrid bite of explosives clinging to Liv's tongue as she pressed against the jagged rock, her breath shallow and ragged. The jammer in her pack hummed faintly, its electromagnetic wall, a shimmering barrier of disrupted signals, having deflected the drone's killing stroke just enough to spare her. She'd felt it build that invisible pulse, scrambling the device's guidance, buying precious seconds to dive clear. EW wasn't glamour. It was this quiet defiance, in the dark, turning whispers of death into static. But now, crouched in the shadow of Bravo's unforgiving flank, Liv Harper was a ghost to her own side. The radio spat confirmations. "Harper, KIA, body recovery pending." Her chest tightened, not from the blast's echo, but from the lie racing homeward, a folded letter bearing her name to the woman who'd bandaged every wound life threw at them. She should report in, flip the switch, correct the error, let the system swallow her back into its gears. "Echo Ridge, this is Harper alive requesting evac." The words formed on her lips, but stuck like gravel. If she did, the questions would avalanche. What was she doing scouting alone? Why ignore orders? They'd ground her, sidelined her again as too reckless, and Delta would roll blind into that kill box. Hayes and Cole, those steady voices she'd monitored from afar. Brothers in arms she couldn't abandon, would pay the price. And her mother, God. Sarah's face flashed unbidden, crumpling over that letter in the quiet kitchen hands that had steadied dying soldiers, now trembling alone. "If I reveal now," Liv whispered to the stone, "they'll stop me from saving them. And Mom's already crying over a daughter she thinks is dust." The crevice felt like a grave, the weight pressing in as doubt clawed deeper. She clambered out under cover of lingering smoke, the Syrian night wrapping her in its chill embrace, and slipped toward a forgotten relay post, a half-buried shack on the ridge's edge, one of her secret spots for tweaking signals. Inside, the air was stale, lit by a single chemlight's glow. Liv slumped against the wall, peeling back her sleeve to check for shrapnel, her athletic frame curved hips folding as she sat, full bust, rising with each labored breath, betraying the tremor she fought to hide. Her fingers found the eagle tattoo, tracing its wings through the thin shirt, the ink a map of old pains. Tears welled hot and unbidden tracing paths down her fair-tanned cheek. "Am I too small for this? Too late, like you said, Dad?" The memory hit like shrapnel, a short, searing flashback to that VA room in Lubbock machines, beeping a dirge, as Tom Harper lay fading his vet's frame shrunken to bones and regret. "Liv, if the system abandons you," he'd rasped, gripping her hand with fading strength. "Save yourself first. Don't chase ghosts, they'll bury you too." His eyes, once sharp as hers, had dulled with the morphine. But the plea lingered a father's final lesson from the ambush that claimed him left bleeding because expendable. Liv blinked hard, the tears spilling now, and pulled up an old video call on her rugged phone, grainy footage from months back. Sarah's face filling the screen in the farmhouse lamplight. "You're stronger than your dad ever knew, Livy," her mother had said, voice thick with pride and ache. "Shadows forge you, not break you. Come home whole." The clip looped Sarah's smile a lifeline, and Liv's sob broke free. What if she wasn't enough? Too female, too fragile. The sparrow they mocked, not the eagle she inked to prove wrong. The doubt roared louder than the blast. "Turn back report, let the big dogs handle it." Safety in the nest. Back at Echo Ridge, the outrage simmered in whispers that cut deeper than any wound. In the mess tent over trays of reheated slop soldiers, clustered like crows on a wire. "Heard Sparrow bought it in Bravo, good riddance." Harlan grunted, forking beans with a smirk. "Always stalling ops with her pings. One less headache." A chorus of nods, low chuckles masking the uneasy men who'd eyed her beauty in passing, but dismissed her bite. "Yeah, Carter's signing the memorial quick. Says she was scouting without orders. Reckless bird flew too close." The gossip spread like sandstorm, painting her a fool, a flirt playing soldier. Carter himself in the command hut scrawled his name on the orders with a heavy sigh, the flag for her casket already prepped. "Poor kid," he muttered to Brooks, who arched a brow. "Kid. She was trouble pushing intel no one wanted. At least Delta's clear now." But in that relay shack, as dawn's first blush crept over the ridges, Liv's tears dried to salt on her skin. The video looped one last time, Sarah's words a hammer on the anvil of her heart. "Shadows forge you." Her father's echo joined. "Save yourself." No. She wiped her face, resolve hardening like cooling steel. The system had abandoned him. She wouldn't let it claim more. "No," she said aloud, voice steady, now blue eyes flashing in the chem light. "I'll prove it. For you, Dad. For all of us left behind." The radio in her pack crackled faintly, a distress ping from Delta, faint, but urgent. The call wasn't refused. It was answered in shadows, where true strength took wing. The distress ping from Delta's radio cut through the static, like a lifeline tossed into the abyss. Faint, fractured, but unmistakable Hayes's voice, edged with grit, calling for extraction. Liv's resolve, freshly hammered from the forge of her doubts, propelled her from the relay shack like a shadow uncoiling. She couldn't storm the gates, not as the dead girl with a wild tale of ambushes ignored. No, she'd slip in quiet, gather what she needed, and vanish into Bravo's maw before the memorial bells tolled. The trek back to Echo Ridge was a ghost's march, skirting patrols under the waxing moon, her athletic frame weaving through wadis like a thread through needle's eye. Dark brown ponytail, matted with sweat, blue eyes, scanning for threats that felt all too human now. Dawn painted the base in bruised purples as she scaled the outer fence, dropping into the supply yard with a soft thud. The med tent loomed ahead, its canvas flaps stirring like weary breaths, a sanctuary for the broken, where secrets sometimes bloomed. Liv needed supplies, bandages, fluids, anything to turn her into a one-woman lifeline for Delta. But as she eased the flap aside, a voice stopped her. Cold, warm as sun-baked earth, yet laced with the same steel she carried. "Harper, Dios mío, you're a sight. Thought the wire said you were—" Dr. Elena Vasquez straightened from her cot, her 40-something frame compact, and sure dark hair streaked with silver pulled into a practical braid, brown eyes sharp as scalpels under the tent's harsh fluorescence. Mexican-American through and through, Elena was the base's quiet heartbeat, a nurse who'd patched more souls than most saw in a lifetime, her hands a bridge between battlefield chaos and fragile hope. Liv froze, hand on her sidearm, but Elena's gaze held no alarm, only a knowing flicker, like she'd seen ghosts before. It's complicated. Liv started voice low, stepping fully in as the flap fell shut behind her. The tent smelled of antiseptic and faint sage. Elena's touch from home. Blast in Bravo. They think I'm gone. But Delta's in it deep, Elena. I have to go after them. The words tumbled out a dam breaking, and with them the secret she'd guarded like a live wire, the ignored SIGINT, the insider's voice, the vow to her father that burned hotter than shrapnel. Elena listened, nodding slow, as she poured 2 cups of instant coffee from a battered pot. Her movements deliberate, unhurried. When Liv finished, breath spent, Elena slid a cup over her own eyes, misting just a touch. Ay, mija. I know that weight, the call no one hears but you. What followed was a sharing deeper than orders, a quiet unraveling in the tent's dim heart. Elena leaned against a supply crate rolling up her sleeve to reveal a faded tattoo, a blooming cactus thorns, and all inked after her first deployment. They called me too emotional back in Afghanistan, she confessed, voice steady but threaded with old ache. Cried over a kid we lost, and suddenly I was sidelined, not cut for combat med. But shadows, they make us strong, Liv. They teach you to feel the breaks before they happen. Her story poured out like balm a young nurse dismissed for her tears, self-taught in field trauma to prove them wrong, rising through ranks on grit and grace. You're not alone in this. That voice you heard sounds like betrayal's whisper. I've bandaged enough insiders' wounds to know trust breaks hardest from within. Liv's throat tightened. Here was a mirror, a sister in shadows, the mentor she'd never sought, but needed like air. Elena's hands calloused, and sure moved then to the med kit on the shelf, a canvas satchel stuffed with miracles and pouches. If you're going, you go prepared, not as Sparrow, but as the eagle I see. She unpacked it methodically, her voice a gentle rhythm. V fluids, first clear bags glinting like promises. These stabilize shock, hook 'em up quick to keep blood pressure steady, buy time for the heart to catch up. Morphine vials next slim and silver. Pain's the enemy, 2-dose low watch for breathing. She demonstrated on a dummy arm, fingers flying in a dance. Liv mirrored her own hands, steadier now, the lesson sinking deep as bone. You self-taught EW from your dad, good. This is your field. Med trauma's just another signal to jam. Then the gift, Elena pressed a battered personal GPS into Liv's palm, its screen scarred, but alive with custom maps of Bravo's veins. My old ride-along from Kandahar, trusted like a compass in the dark. Go, daughter, your father would be proud seeing his girl forge ahead. But support came with shadows of its own. Elena glanced at the tent flap voice dropping. I'll cover say you checked in hurt hold up for eval, but discipline, it's not blind obedience, mija. It's choosing when to disobey, when the system's the wound. Her words landed like her father's, a life skill etched in scars, question the chain, mend the breaks. Liv nodded, the weight of allyship settling warm in her chest, a fire kindled against the cold ahead. The east gate loomed as the sun crested guards yawning through shift change. Lev approached with her forged pass, clipped to her lapel, EW repair detail sector relay. The lie smooth as her low voice, but Corporal Tate, a lanky kid with eyes like hawks, squinted at her dust-streaked uniform hand, hovering near his holster. Harper thought you were. He trailed off, suspicion hardening. Pass looks off. What's the rush at this hour? Liv's pulse thrummed, blue eyes meeting his square, her athletic poise, broad shoulders, squared curvaceous form, shifting with quiet command, leaning in just enough. Brother, it's mission critical, she said, voice velvet over steel, a hint of Tex's drawl softening the edge. Comms glitch could blind Delta out there. Can't have that on our watch, right? You know how Carter gets. Tate hesitated, gaze flicking to her face, then lower the charm, weaving its subtle spell. He grunted, waving her through with a reluctant nod. Fine. But make it quick, Sparrow. The gate clanged shut behind her, the Syrian desert unfolding like a challenge. Whipping sands, already stirring rocks, glinting under the rising light. Liv adjusted the med kit on her shoulder, GPS humming in her pocket. Elena's words, a talisman, shadows make us strong. But as she crested the first dune, her radio crackled to life, that gravelly voice slithering through Sparrow's dead clear path for the finish. The insider closer now hissing triumph. Liv's steps faltered, then hardened. The path was hers to clear. The gate's clang faded like a distant memory as Liv Harper crested the first dune, the Syrian desert swallowing her whole, a vast breathing beast of rust-red sands and whispering winds that tugged at her uniform like insistent fingers. The path was hers to clear Elena's GPS, a faithful heartbeat in her pocket, its screen mapping the unseen veins of this unforgiving land. Bravo lay ahead, a gauntlet of dry wadis and sun-scorched flats, reminiscent of the Badlands near Altanf, where convoys had vanished into mirages before. But Liv moved with purpose, her athletic frame slicing through the heat. Sweat already beading on her fair-tanned skin, soaking her shirt to cling against her full bust, heaving with each measured stride. Dark brown ponytail whipping like a banner. Blue eyes locked on the horizon where mountains clawed the sky. Broad shoulders rolled with the rhythm of survival, curved hips swaying in the low crouch she'd perfected in training, every inch the warrior her doubters refused to see. She pulled the GPS free, its rugged face glowing with hand-scrawled overlays, her own cartography, born of late nights poring over sat imagery and father's faded topo maps. Triangulating signals was her edge, calculating position by wave angles, like threading a needle in the dark. 3 points make a truth. Tom had taught her once his voice gravel over coffee in Texas, demonstrating with sticks in the dirt. Lock 'em right, and you see the trap before it springs. Now the device pinged a fix, bearing 247 degrees, 4 clicks, to Bravo's mouth. Liv adjusted boots, sinking into the soft, wadi beds, those ancient river ghosts now cracked earth that sucked at her soles. The med kit thumped against her thigh, a reminder of Elena's trust. Her words, a quiet drum. Go, daughter. The desert tested her early, a patrol's shadow flickering on the ridge, 3 ISIS fighters in ragged black AKs slung low as they scanned the flats. Liv dropped behind a boulder cluster, heart steadying to the rhythm of her breath. No time for fear. This was the threshold, the line where orders blurred into instinct. She unslung the jammer hands flying over the device, with the grace of long practice, disrupting frequencies, like unraveling a lie. The air hummed faintly as it activated a silent scream across the spectrum that turned their radios to white noise. Come on, she whispered, watching through a crack. The lead fighter cursed in Arabic, slapping his handset, his comrades fanning out blind, veering off like hounds lost in fog. My hands fly over the device. She thought the pulse of it alive under her fingers. Frequencies fracturing into chaos. They veer off blind, swallowed by the dunes. It was EW poetry. Invisible walls rising, turning hunters to wanderers. As their shapes dissolved into the haze, Liv exhaled the eagle tattoo on her back, prickling like wings itching to spread. She'd crossed into the trial, now. No turning back, the desert her confessor and judge. The sun climbed mercilessly, baking the air into a shimmering veil, but Liv pressed on, weaving through the wadi's twists, where flash floods had carved secrets into stone. Her body protested the sweat-soaked uniform, chafing bust, heaving with the effort of hauling the pack, blue eyes squinting against the glare. But determination beauty shone through a quiet radiance. In the set of her jaw, the fluid power of her stride. Elena's kit weighed like hope, the GPS a whisper of guidance clicks, out-signal strength rising. She paused at a dry crossing, triangulating again wave angles, converging on a faint delta echo buried under static. "Hold on," she murmured to the void, thinking of Hayes and Cole, faceless brothers, whose voices she'd guarded from afar. The shadows lengthened as noon approached the desert's breath, turning from hot sigh to gathering growl. Then it hit the sandstorm, a biblical fury uncoiling from the east winds, lashing like 1,000 vengeful spirits. Mini-climax roared in without mercy. Grains pelted her like buckshot visibility dropping to arm's length as the world turned to swirling ochre chaos. Liv dove for a boulder outcrop, curling fetal against its flank, the med kit clutched to her chest like a shield. The gale howled, whipping her ponytail free to lash her face, tearing at her uniform until it flapped like a flag in surrender. She nearly lost her footing on the loose scree, a slip that sent her scrambling heart lurching as the edge crumbled beneath her boot. "Not now!" she gasped, nails digging into rock body trembling athletic lines, taut sweat and sand, caking her skin full bust, pressed tight against the stone for purchase. In that teetering void, her mother's voice surfaced soft as the necklace's engraving. "Shadows test us, Livy, but they don't break the forged." Sarah's hands bandaging Tom's wounds under the Texas stars had taught endurance. This storm was just another shadow testing the steel Elena promised. As the wind screamed its peak, Liv's mind, cleared resolve blooming fierce. She couldn't fight the beast head-on, but she could outwit it, like jamming a signal turning chaos to her ally. Fumbling the radio from her pack, fingers numb with grit, she tuned to a monitored freak, her self-taught Arabic flawless, from father's tapes and lonely drills. "Coalition patrol incoming sector. Clear, stand down." She broadcast, voice steady, amid the roar mimicking command cadence with a twist of static for authenticity. The lie hung in the air, a ghost transmission designed to spook any lurking ears. And it worked. The storm's howl masked her, but distant shouts cut through fragmented orders, in Pashto fading as shadows retreated. Internal fire surged. "Dad, I'm doing it!" The gale eased to a sullen grumble visibility clawing back, and Liv rose, sand-shedding like a phoenix, blue eyes fierce anew. But as the dust devils danced away, her radio crackled, not the insider's hiss, but Delta's desperate plea. Hayes's tone frayed. Pinned down, Hayes critical, anyone copy. The threshold crossed the trial's teeth bared. Liv's path led straight into the heart of it. The radio's plea echoed in Liv's ears like a siren's call. Hayes's frayed words, pinned down. Hayes critical, pulling her deeper into Bravo's jagged heart, where the mountains folded into a rocky ravine, like the claws of some ancient predator. The storm's remnants hung in the air, a gritty haze that stung her eyes and caked her fair-tanned skin. But she pushed on boots, crunching over shale that gave way underfoot. Elena's GPS guided her true, its triangulated fix, narrowing to a choke point, a sheer-walled gash in the earth, shadowed and silent, save for the faint crack of suppressed fire. Liv's athletic frame tensed, sweat tracing rivulets down her neck soaking the collar that clung to her full bust. Her dark brown ponytail, frayed from the gale, stuck to her sharp features like a warrior's braid. Blue eyes scanned the lip-spotting movement. Two forms hunkered against a boulder. Rifles trained outward, the air thick with the copper tang of blood. She slid down the incline on her haunch, loose stones rattling like warnings, med kit banging against her thigh. "Delta Vanguard copies," she hissed into the radio, using the ghost call sign she'd whispered to herself in the bunker. "Hold fire, friendly inbound." A pause stretched eternal. Then Cole's voice barked back, laced with pain and paranoia. "Vanguard identify or we light you up." Liv crested the ravine floor, hands raised her curvaceous silhouette, framed against the dusty sky, broad shoulders, squared hips, shifting for balance as she stepped into the kill zone. There they were, Petty Officer Ethan Cole, mid-30s, with a leg wound, shredding his pant leg, shrapnel glittering like cruel stars. And Gunner's mate David Hayes, slumped pale against the rock chest, a blooming red flower from a through-and-through breaths, shallow as whispers. Cole swung his rifle eyes wild under his helmet. Sparrow. The hell command saying you're dead? This a trap? Suspicion etched his face, the misdirection of her earlier doubts now mirroring his. Hadn't she wondered about him? That evasive quiet in the mess. Liv knelt, slow hands, open blue eyes meeting his without flinch. "It's me, Cole. Blast in Bravo jammer saved my skin, but they jumped the gun on the report. I chose you over calling it in. No one left behind." The words hung heavy her father's vow made flesh. Hayes coughed wetly, managing a ghost of a nod. "Eagle. You're our eagle." The whisper evoked her tattoo, a spark of alliance in his fading gaze, the first thread of trust weaving through the pain. No time for tales. Liv's hands moved like Elena's lessons reborn, unpacking the kit, with precision born of shadows. "Pressure dressing first," she murmured more to steady herself than teach, though Cole watched rapt. "Stops the bleed by compressing the arteries funnel, the flow give the body a fighting chance." She pressed gauze to Hayes's chest, taping it tight, the fabric soaking crimson under her fingers. An IV line, next needle slipping into his vein, with a prayer fluids dripping steady to chase the shock. Morphine followed a measured push to blunt the edge. Hayes's breathing eased color flickering back, while Cole gritted through his own field, dressing shrapnel plucked like thorns from flesh. "How'd you know?" Cole rasped, suspicion cracking but not gone. The ambush, it's insider work. That voice. Liv trailed off the gravelly echo still haunting her. Alliance formed in the blood and bind, but enemies lurked within the team within the wire. The ravine offered no mercy, its walls a vertical gauntlet of crumbling limestone, and wind-hollowed holds the only exit, a sheer cliff face rising 50 feet to the ridge above real Syrian stone, pocked and treacherous, where one slip meant the end. "Up's our only play," Cole grunted, testing his leg with a wince. Hayes was dead weight, now 200 pounds of muscle and gear his life tethered to Liv's will. She rigged a hasty harness from her tack vest, and climbing cords slinging him across her back, low center of gravity, her secret weapon that petite frame belying the power coiled in her core. "I've got him," she said. Voice low thunder, though doubt flickered too heavy like carrying father's regrets. Cole nodded, rifle ready for cover, and they began the ascent, Liv's boots finding purchase on the crumbly rock, fingers clawing holds that flaked away like lies. Mini-climax clawed back halfway up a gust, tore through the ravine wind, howling like banshees dislodging a slab that skittered into the void. Liv teetered Hayes's bulk, yanking her backward, the harness biting into her shoulders. sweat-slick hands slipping on lichen-smeared stone. "Too heavy like my father," she gasped, the low point, crashing in vision, blurring with strain and memory. Tom's weight in that hospital bed, abandoned too much for the squad to bear. Her foot skidded the drop, yawning below full bust, heaving against the harness straps, athletic lines, screaming protest. Cole lunged from below, his good arm clamping her boot. "Fight, Sparrow. You're not dropping us, not after this." His pull anchored her, a brother's grit, and Liv surged, muscles burning, blue eyes locked on the summit. As they crested, collapsing in a heap of labored breaths, she shared a fragment of light. "My mom, nurse in Iraq rotations, saved a squad once stitching under fire. Said every wound's a story. Yours isn't ending here." Cole's nod sealed it. The team forged tighter enemies, forgotten in the shared climb. But the radio shattered the fragile peace, crackling with venom. "Delta down, finish them." Reyes's voice, that mentor's timbre, twisted, foul, slithering through the freak, like poison. Liv's blood iced. The deep mystery uncoiled. Reyes, her old drill sergeant, grudge-fueled over her meteoric rise, the promotions he'd chased and lost. He'd sold them out for ISIS cash, a betrayal rooted in envy, like those naval scandals, where brothers turned knives inward. The misdirection hit hard. She'd suspected Cole. At first, his quiet ways, a red herring in her doubt. Insider threat. She breathed education bitter on her tongue. Betrayal from within hurts most, cuts the chain we fight for. Hayes stirred weakly. "Who?" But before she could answer, the sky buzzed a drone's whine, returning like judgment, its shadow slicing the ridge. The drone's whine sliced the ridge like a scalpel through flesh, its shadow a predatory smear against the fading light, plunging the trio into a dance with death. Liv's blue eyes snapped skyward. Hayes's weight a dead anchor on her back. His breaths a labored rattle against her spine. The open desert stretched before them now, a merciless expanse of dunes rolling toward Echo Ridge. Like frozen waves, the base's lights a distant promise on the horizon. "Move!" Cole barked, slinging his rifle and firing a burst tracers, arcing futile into the dusk, the rounds pinging harmlessly off the drone's underbelly. It banked a mechanical vulture, its payload humming with intent, the insider's hand guiding it from afar. Liv surged forward, legs churning sand that burned like embers through her boots, her athletic frame, sweat-soaked shirt plastered to her full bust, heaving with every jolt. Dark brown hair, tousled wild from the ridge-wind ponytail, half undone, propelled by sheer will. Hayes slumped heavier with each step, his 200 pounds across she bore without complaint, low center of gravity keeping her steady where others might buckle. But the jammer in her pack faltered, its battery low from the storm's overload signals crashing like waves against a crumbling dam. "Battery's dying," she gasped, fumbling the switch mid-stride. Electronic warfare's cruel jest, the device that saved her, now betrayed frequencies overloading in a storm of static, leaving the drone's lock unbroken. It dove closer, rotors throbbing like a migraine, the external conflict a hunter's game where she was prey. They bounded in Overwatch. Cole's education, kicking in a tactic drilled into every operator, mutual covering fire, one advancing, while the other suppressed. "You take point, I'll cover," Cole yelled, dropping to a knee behind a dune crest, his bursts stitching the sky to buy her yards. Liv nodded, surging ahead in a low sprint, Hayes's blood warm on her shoulder, the medkit straps chafing raw. It was rhythm of brothers and sisters, in arms, leapfrog through hell, one life shielding the next. But barriers rose like the dunes, internal storms fiercer than any gale. A short flashback pierced her Tom's face, in the Iraqi dust betrayal's blade in his side squad, vanishing into smoke. It killed him, not the bullet, the leaving, he'd whispered in her dreams. Won't let it repeat. Not Hayes, not Cole. The vow fueled her shadows, forging steel from grief. Cole confessed, as they swapped his voice, cracking over the wine. I thought it was Hayes. The quiet, the way he held back, figured he sold us. The team barrier cracked open suspicions, poison spilling out, his limp dragging as he caught up. Liv glanced back, blue eyes fierce amid the exhaustion. We all doubt in the dark. Reyes? It's him. Grudge from my rise sold us for scraps. The words bonded them deeper, allies reforged in the fire of shared blindness. Then the outrage taunted from the radio, Reyes's voice slithering through like venom in veins. Sparrow, you're always too small. Drop the dead weight. Join the winning side. The words landed like lashes, echoing every briefing dismissal, every stick to your lane. Liv's jaw clenched, fury boiling over the ache, her body screaming protest hair, tousled in sweat-matted strands, fair-tanned skin streaked with grime, broad shoulders quaking under the load. Near collapse, clawed close, a dune's lips gave way, sand avalanching underfoot, and she stumbled, knees buckling into the soft guve. Hayes slipped his groan, a knife to her heart. She hit the trough hard, face first into the grit, the world spinning in a haze of pain and failure. Not enough! She choked, the low point crashing like the drone above, too small. Too late, father's shadow looming. Her hand clawed to her back, fingers finding the eagle tattoo through torn fabric, tracing its fierce outline. Shadows, forge me. The ink warmed under her touch, Elena's echo joining her mother's strength, not in size, but in the unbreakable core. Cole dropped beside her, firing blind to scatter the drone's approach, his hand on her arm a steadying force. Up eagle bounding now. You cover eye hall. They switched the overwatch, a desperate ballet. Cole taking Hayes's weight, Liv's bursts buying air as the drone circled its missile, arming with a whine that chilled bone. The base loomed closer, lights winking like beacons of mercy, but Reyes's signal crackled final. Ambush at the gate, and this. The inmost cave yawned ahead, its jaws lined with teeth from within. The base's lights flickered into cruel clarity as the dune's crest fell away. Echo Ridge's gates looming like a false salvation. Steel jaws parted wide, but shadowed by ambush's breath. Reyes's signal had been no bluff. There, he stood a hulking silhouette in the floodlight's glare, his sergeant's stripes glinting like false medals on a traitor's chest. The man who'd once barked drills into Liv's bones now blocked the threshold, rifle-raised eyes hollow with the rot of grudge. The drone hovered above like a vengeful god, its payload armed and whining the air electric with betrayal's storm. Cole cursed Hayes's weight, sagging between them, but Liv's blue eyes locked on Reyes, sharp, unyielding, the cave's heart, pulsing with the fight she'd been forged for. You. Reyes' snarled voice, gravel ground fine by years of swallowed envy, stepping forward to seal the gate behind him. Knew you'd crawl back, Sparrow, always the thorn. The major twist, uncoiled, then raw and ripping, he leveled the barrel not at shadows, but at her. I sold you out. Liv sold Delta too. You stole my spot, climbing over my back with your fancy signals and pretty face. ISIS paid better than this sandpit ever did. The words landed like the drone's shadow, multi-layered venom external blade from the rifle internal poison from the man she'd called mentor. Liv's heart hammered Hayes's groan, a spur in her side, but she shifted med kit, slung low. Her athletic frame, coiling dark brown hair, tousled wild fair-tanned skin, slick with desert's kiss. Full bust rising steady under the strain. He fired first, the smart gun's muzzle flashing a high-tech beast with sensor-guided rounds locked on her heat signature. But Liv was EW incarnate. Her hand whipped to the jammer, thumbing at Liv in a prayer of pulses. EW counters smart weapons. She breathed the education a defiant mantra as the device hummed fury, disrupting sensors like shattering glass. The rifle stuttered rounds veering wild into the sand sparks flying from its scope as electronic chains snapped. Reyes roared, charging the gap, his free hand clawing for a sidearm, the conflict layering thick his betrayal, a system's fracture, her defiance, the mending fire. Cole laid cover fire bullets chewing the gatepost, but Reyes pressed close enough now for his laugh, bitter barking to cut deeper than lead. Women like you break the chain, Harper. Too soft, too small, always were. The peak outrage ignited in Liv's core, ablaze from every dismissal, every lane they'd shoved her into. We forge it stronger. She shot back, voice steel over the whine, lunging as the drone dove surprise, exploding in a plume of fire, its payload detonating midair from Reyes's remote trigger. The blast wave hurled her sideways, shrapnel grazing her shoulder in a hot kiss that tore fabric and flesh. She hit the ground, rolling pain blooming white-hot, but instinct shoved her forward, diving between Cole and Hayes, her body a shield as the shockwave buffeted them. The eagle tattoo blazed into view, inked wings spread across her exposed back through the rent shirt, a symbol screaming defiance amid the smoke. Reyes advanced, triumph, twisting his face, but Liv rose, blood trickling warm down her arm, blue eyes locked on his. The cave's depths had her now, life hanging by the thread of her metal, proving not just survival, but the strength shadows had wrought. The explosion's roar drowned the world, but not Elena's voice, crackling urgent over the base net. Alert intruder at East Gate, Harper's in medics. Now. She'd pulled the alarm from her tent fingers, flying on the console covering her daughter's flight one last time. Base troops erupted from barracks like hornets, from a nest boots, thundering rifles up a squad led by Harlan himself, his swagger forgotten in the frenzy. Reyes whirled, caught in the crossfire, his smart gun jamming futile as Liv's device sang its swan song. Cole seized the moment, dragging Hayes through the gate's widening maw, the wounded man's eyes fluttering thanks in the chaos. Liv lunged last shoulder, screaming fire, grabbing Reyes's ankle in a tackle born of Texas dirt and father's grit. He kicked free, but the squad closed, zip ties snapping on wrists, rifle butts driving him down. Traitor, Harlan bellowed, hauling him up as MPs swarmed. The drone riderless now spiraled erratically, crashing in a bloom of flame beyond the wire. Life or death teetered on that edge. Liv staggered inside gate, slamming shut, collapsing against the HESCO barriers as medics rushed. Her vision tunneled, blood pooling warm, but she fumbled Elena's kit, one-handed gauze to the gash pressure firm as her resolve. Dad. She thought the words a silent vow amid the pain. I did it. Didn't leave him. The eagle on her back throbbed with the wound. A badge of the metal proved small frame, unbroken shadows forge complete. Teammates gathered in awe faces slack with the impossible Harlan kneeling voice rough. You jammed the impossible, Harper. That gun, it was locked on you. Carter pushed through, mustache quivering, eyes wide on the captured Reyes. What the hell happened out there? Whispers rippled. She's alive. Brought Delta home. The Sparrow's wings unfurling in their stares. But as the medics stabilized, her IV dripping cool salvation, the weight settled Victory's edge sharp as debriefs blade. Would they hail the hero or court-martial the ghost who defied the chain? The medbay's fluorescent hum wrapped around Liv like a hesitant embrace, the sting of her shoulder wound, dulled to a persistent throb under fresh bandages. Elena hovered nearby, her nurse's hands, a steadying force checking the IV drip with a mother's quiet efficiency. "You forged through Mija," she murmured, brown eyes soft with the pride of one who'd walked similar fires. Outside the base, buzzed with the aftermath, Reyes dragged to holding his betrayal, unraveling like a pulled thread, confessions spilling under the MP's lights. But for Liv, victory's first bloom came softer in the rasp of Hayes's voice from the adjacent cot. He stirred pale but pulsing with borrowed life, his hand finding hers across the rail. "Eagle, you saved us. Carried me like I weighed nothing. Thought we were ghosts. Turns out you were the light." The words landed warm alliance sealed in the weak squeeze of his grip. Cole nodding from the doorway, his limp forgotten in the glow of gratitude. Carter burst in, then Mustache, bristling Brooks, trailing with a tablet of after-action logs. The debrief hung heavy, the air thick with the scent of iodine and unspoken reckonings. "Harper." Carter started, voice gruff as gravel. "You broke every protocol in the book, unauthorized, optified chain of command. Could end your career right here." Liv met his gaze, blue eyes steady despite the haze of morphine, her athletic frame propped against pillows, dark brown hair, loose, now framing sharp features softened by fatigue, the curve of her neck graceful where the necklace rested. But before doubt could root, Brooks slid the tablet forward, Reyes's intercepted comms glowing incriminating. "Sir, her SIGINT was gold. Saved Delta exposed the leak. Without her, we'd be counting coffins." Carter's jaw worked, then softened a rare crack in the oak. "Damn it, girl. You jammed the impossible turned betrayal into breakthrough. Base owes you." The acknowledgement rippled outward like dawn over dunes. Word spread through Echo Ridge faster than a sandstorm. The Sparrow wasn't dead. She'd risen, wings spread. Harlan cornered her in recovery, his swagger humbled eyes flicking to the bandaged shoulder where her tattoo peeked like a secret shared. "Called you bird brain once too often," he admitted, rubbing his neck. "Sparrow, hell, you're Eagle now. Sorry, Harper, Liv. Owe you a beer when you're up." The apologies flowed, then a tide turning sergeants who'd chuckled at her codes now sought her. Reads the mess hall whispers shifting from doubt to deference. "Eagle flies high." They'd mutter the nickname reborn, not in mockery, but in myth. Promotion came swift as justice. Colonel Grant's orders pinned to the board by noon. E6 stripes for Specialist Harper lead, on a new EW tactical unit, her brainchild blending signals, smarts with field grit, diverse skills win wars. Grant boomed in the quick huddle, his baritone carrying the weight of change. "No more lanes, Harper's proving it. Women tech instinct, that's the edge." Liv traced the chevrons on her sleeve, the silver glinting like her necklace's engraving a reward, not just in rank, but in rewriting the rules that had clipped her. The small twist came quiet in the medbay's hush. Cole slipped in after lights down. His leg braced, but step sure, pressing a worn Delta badge into her palm, eagle-etched brass cool as truth. "For the one who carried us home," he said, voice low with the bond of survivors. "Eternal ally, Eagle. Brothers forever." She clasped it, the metal warming in her fist, alliance etched deeper than ink. But the deepest reward bloomed in pixels and tears. The sat phone rang, Sarah's face filling the screen from Texas, dusk eyes red-rimmed from the false grief. "Mom," Liv breathed, voice cracking. "I'm alive and stronger than Dad ever knew." Sarah's sob broke free, hands flying to her mouth, the farmhouse kitchen blurring behind. "Livy, oh God, shadows forged you baby stronger than any chain." They wept together, miles melting in the glow, the necklace's words a bridge across the ache. Liv touched the eagle tattoo, then fingers lingering on the hidden wings, a smile curving her lips, captivating radiant the beauty of one who'd seized not just the sword, but the dawn it carved. The morphine's haze lifted like fog over the dunes, leaving Liv with the sharp edges of reality, her new E6 stripes heavy on her sleeve, the echo of her mother's tears still warm in her ear, and the bass settling into an uneasy dawn. Echo Ridge stirred with the rhythm of survival convoys, revving sentries rotating. But for Liv, the road back felt like wading upstream, every step pulling at the wound in her shoulder, the eagle tattoo, a tender map of the night's toll. Elena had discharged her with a fierce hug, her brown eyes holding the unspoken. Resilience is returning stronger, mija. You forged it now. Walk it. But as Liv stepped into the command center for the formal debrief, the weight of stronger felt fragile as sand. The room was a pressure cooker, Carter at the head of the scarred oak table mustache, twitching like a barometer of doubt. Brooks tapping her tablet logs, scrolling like accusations. Grant looming in the corner, his colonel's stars glinting under the harsh bulbs. Harlan and a knot of officers filled the seats, their gazes a mix of awe and wariness, the eagle's flight still fresh, but the chain she'd snapped dangling raw. Harper. Carter opened voice like gravel under tires. You brought Delta home jammed Reyes play hell of a night, but you broke orders. Unauthorized exit solo op jammed a superior's weapon. That's not grit. That's borderline mutiny. The words hung stirring the fears Liv had buried under the dunes, losing it all the stripes, the unit, the fragile trust she'd clawed from shadows. Her blue eyes held steady dark brown hair, pulled back neat now athletic frame straight, despite the pull of stitches, but inside the old doubt whispered too small, too defiant, just like Dad warned. Brooks cleared her throat, sliding printouts across Reyes's comms, time stamps, aligning with the ambush payoffs traced to shadow accounts. Evidence clears her, sir. Her SIGINT flagged it. First saved lives exposed the rot. Murmurs rippled Harlan, nodding slow. She carried Hayes like he was air. We owe her. Carter rubbed his jaw, the tension coiling tighter. Liv's heart echoing the silence. Fears clawed up visions of courts-martial stripping her bare. The farmhouse call reversed Sarah's voice, breaking again. They can't take you from me twice. The system that blind beast her father cursed loomed ready to devour the dawn she'd seized. Then the alarms shattered it. Klaxons wailing like banshees, red lights pulsing through the vents. Incoming multiple tangos east perimeter. A runner burst in, face ashen. Surprise counterattack ISIS remnants tipped by Reyes's leaked cords, swarming the wire in a hail of RPGs and small arms fire. The base erupted, soldiers scrambling for foxholes, the ground shuddering under the barrage. Carter bolted for the door, but Liv was already moving. Shoulder be damned, her pack's jammer slung like an old friend. Mass jamming, blanket disruption across the spectrum. She barked, education spilling in the rush as she keyed the rig to full power. It was EW on steroids, not a pinpoint lock, but a roaring flood of noise, smothering enemy radios, drone feeds, even IED triggers in a wide arc. The air hummed thick signals, frying like overcooked circuits, RPG crews cursing blind as their sights went dark, insurgents stumbling into kill zones without comms. Liv hit the ramparts, blue eyes fierce amid the chaos, fingers dancing the controls as bullets whined past. Her frame-curved hips braced against the sandbag, full bust, rising with controlled breaths, anchored the line the jammer's pulse, her heartbeat. Fears of loss twisted with the recoil. This could be her end, a hero's blaze or traitor's pyre. But Elena appeared at her elbow, Rifle in hand, voice cutting the din, resilience is returning stronger. Liv, hold the line. The words landed like her mother's talisman fears, fracturing under the weight of purpose. The attack faltered tangos, scattering into the dunes, their chain broken by invisible chains. Cheers rose, ragged, as the last RPG fizzled silent, the base holding. But as the smoke cleared, Grant's shadow fell long in the command doorway, his face unreadable. Harper, stand down. We talk. Now. The debrief's echo returned, amplified heroes' laurels or traitors' irons. The road back, twisted decision's blade hovering. Grant's shadow in the doorway stretched long as the debrief's smoke. His unreadable face, a mask carved from years of hard calls, the kind that broke good soldiers or made legends. Liv stood in the command center's hush, the air still thick with the counterattack's cordite ghost. Her shoulder, a dull fire under the dressing. Carter shifted beside her mustache, drooping like a flag at half-mast, while Brooke's tablet lay silent, its evidence a damning ledger of Reyes's fall. The room held its breath, the decision's blade hovering sharp. Hero's crown or traitor's irons. Liv's blue eyes met Grant's without flinching her athletic frame. Dark brown hair neatly rebound, despite the chaos, fair-tanned skin, marked by faint bruises poised on the edge of everything she'd fought for. Fears from the road back lingered a whisper of the system's blind jaws, but Elena's words anchored her resilience, returning stronger. This was the resurrection's forge, the moment shadows yielded to light. Grant stepped forward, his boots echoing like judgment, and for a heartbeat, the room tensed. Then a rare crack split his granite, a nod almost imperceptible, followed by a file slapped onto the table. Yellowed pages from an old Iraq dossier, Tom's name stamped bold across the top. The final twist, Harper. Grant rumbled, voice low thunder, isn't just Reyes's greed. Its roots in the dust where your father walked. The perfect misdirection unraveled Reyes's grudge, traced back to Iraq, a squad-level grudge festering since Tom Harper's abandonment. Reyes, the junior, then who'd pulled rank to retreat, leaving Tom bleeding for tactical necessity. But Tom, in his last lucid days, had warned Liv in a scribbled letter she'd tucked away. Watch Reyes, girl, he's got ghosts that bite. Grant's eyes softened, the colonel's mask slipping. Your dad saw it coming. You finished it, not just the enemies outside, but the rot in our house. EW like yours. It changes protocol. Women lead now, no more lanes. You're promoted effective, immediate full staff sergeant heading the integrated EW unit. Diversity isn't quota, it's strength. The triumph washed over her like a desert rain, not just over insurgents or drones, but the system itself, the chains of prejudice that had bound her small frame since sniper school denials and briefing laughs. Cheers erupted ragged from the officers, Harlan pounding the table with a whoop. Eagle leads, damn right! Liv's throat tightened, the eagle tattoo on her back, warming like approval from the grave, her necklace's engraving pulsing with her pulse. She'd triumphed, shadows transmuted to wings, the base's culture cracking open, to let light in new unit honors, diversity blending EW wizards, like her, with field grunts, ranks no longer silos, but a web of shared metal. The resurrection bloomed full in the base ceremony 2 days hence, under a sky bruised purple by Syrian dusk, the parade ground ringed by ranks and crisp fatigues, Echo Ridge's heart assembled on the dust-choked square. Grant stood tall at the podium, his baritone booming over the mic. Sergeant Harper's flight exposed a traitor saved lives and rewrote our playbook. She's not just survivor, she's the new standard. The crowd. Harlan front row. Brooks beaming, even Carter nodding erupted as Liv stepped forward, her uniform tailored sharp E6 chevrons gleaming beside the Purple Heart, pinned fresh. Teammates saluted in waves, Cole and Hayes propped on crutches at the fore, their voices joining the thunder, "Eagle flies high." Hayes gripped her hand, eyes bright. "You carried us, now we follow." Cole added, badge glinting on her collar, "Brothers forever, Sarge." The salute rolled like a sea Prejudice's old walls crumbling in the roar, women in the ranks, standing taller, the base reborn in her image. But the deepest stirring came private in the medbay's alcove, where Elena had stashed a footlocker from Liv's bunk. Mail rerouted in the chaos, a yellowed envelope surfacing like a ghost's hand. Tom's script, faded, but fierce. "Liv, you're my strength, the one I couldn't be. Don't let the shadows win, forge 'em into flight. Love, Dad." The words blurred as tears came hot, and healing the letter, a bridge across years of loss. His abandonment, her doubts, the war's cruel echoes that haunted so many like him. Seniors in VFW halls would know this ache, the letters from fallen sons and daughters, the quiet wars fought in hearts long after the guns fell silent. Liv clutched it to her chest, the eagle tattoo aching sweet, and fired up the sat phone. Sarah's face filled the screen, Texas twilight gilding her hair, eyes wide with wonder. "Livy, the call from base staff sergeant. My girl." They hugged through Pixel's arms wrapping air, Sarah's sob mingling with laughter. "He'd burst his buttons, baby. You're his strength and mine," Liv cried. Then unashamed, the tears washing the 60 Pullah's hearts in the audience who remembered their own losses. Buddies left in jungles, or sands, letters folded in dressers still. "We made it, Mom. Shadows forged us strong." The ceremony's echo lingered as Liv stood tall amid the salutes, the unit's banner unfurling behind her diversity, woven in threads of every hue, a promise of equals in the fight. Triumph complete not in glory's flash, but in the quiet mending of broken chains. The broken chains of that ceremony didn't shatter. They reshaped, weaving into the fabric of Echo Ridge like threads pulled from the desert's loom. Sergeant Liv Harper Eagle, now to every voice on the wire, stepped into her role, not as conqueror, but as architect, leading the new EW unit from a revamped bunker that hummed with fresh purpose. No longer a shadowed cave of green screens and solitude. It buzzed with a mosaic of faces, tech-savvy specialists, like her field-hardened grunts from Delta's ranks, even a few women from Intel, who'd once whispered doubts in the corners. Equality in ranks, skills over size. Grant had decreed in the orders, and Liv made it breath. Training sessions blurred lines, Cole drilling close quarters with her signals, Team Hayes bandaged but unbowed sharing sniper quals where she'd once been barred. The base transformed under her touch protocols, rewritten to funnel Sparrow insights, like hers, into every op turning Prejudice's old walls into bridges. Drones jammed in sims, insiders sniffed before they struck, and the losses they dwindled. Each saved life, a quiet echo of the vow she'd carried from Bravo's bloodied sands. It was never too late to act as her father taught, not in the blaze of battle, but in the steady work of mending. Liv felt it deepest in the quiet hours leading patrols, where the unit's diversity shone, a young Latina analyst jamming feeds, while a grizzled vet covered her flank, no questions of too small or too soft. The legacy rippled outward. Echo Ridge, a beacon in Syria's sprawl, its reports filtering up channels, inspiring tweaks and doctrine back home. Harper's modeled the brass, called it a nod to the woman who'd proven shadows didn't dim light. They amplified it. And in those transformations, Liv saw Tom's ghost smile the vet who'd been left behind, now marching forward through her. The deep humanistic pull came home in fragments of memory, a short flashback to Texas summers that grounded her like roots in red soil. Picture the backyard BBQ under that sprawling oak mesquite smoke, curling lazy from the grill. Sarah flipping ribs with hands that still smelled of antiseptic. Liv home on leave perched on the porch steps, a gaggle of veterans kids from the local VFW clustered around her wide-eyed tots, with scraped knees and endless questions. "Tell us about the desert, Aunt Liv," one piped a boy no older than 10, his grandpa nodding from the rocker, pipe clenched in approval. She'd spin yarns then not of drones or jams, but of shadows that shaped heroes. "My dad taught me big or small you carry your team, like this eagle on my back. It flies 'cause it trusts the wind." The kids leaned in giggling as she sketched feathers in the dust, Sarah watching from the doorway, with tears she didn't hide. "You're his echo, Livy, story telling the losses into lessons." Those evenings' laughter mingling with the cicada's song healed the ache of letters never sent, turning war's ghosts into tales, for the next watch touches that would resonate with the silver-haired listeners who knew the weight of tales told around kitchen tables, losses shared to lighten the load. Entertaining close came in the unit's first demo, Under a Sky Streaked Gold by Syrian Sunset. Liv stood at the helm, jammer in hand, a sleek EW drone lifting on silent rotors, her design blending signals, smarts with flight grace. "Watch this," she called to the gathered ranks, voice light, as the wind fingers dancing the controls. The drone banked, jamming a mock enemy feed in a blink, tracers veering wild on the sim screen. Cheers rose, but Liv's smile captivated deepest confident. Radiant, her sharp features softened in the glow, dark brown hair, catching the light like burnished copper athletic beauty, radiating power undimmed by scars. Broad shoulders relaxed, full bust, rising with a laugh as the drone looped triumphant, the eagle tattoo hidden but alive beneath. It was joy in the craft, the kind that reminded them strength wasn't just survival, it was soaring. This fictional story draws from real heroes to remind us American resilience is overcoming shadows. I once thought prejudice eternal, a chain no hammer could break. But like Liv, you can forge your path, turning doubts to wings. What shadows have you faced? The battles unspoken, the mates left behind share below. Let's inspire each other, weave our stories into something unbreakable. Like if it touched your heart, sub for more tales of grit that prove it's never too late. Comment, Eagle flies, to connect our community, because in the end, we all carry each other home.